G'day everyone. Before we hop into today's vlog, I just want to remind you to please hit that subscribe button. From now on, I'm going to be putting out daily online poker vlogs. We're going to be tracking my process as I play these 6 max online poker cash games, 6 out of 7 days of the week. Make sure you hit subscribe so you get the vlogs as they come out. But for now, onto the vlog. G'day everyone, welcome back to the vlog. It is currently 6 a.m. here on another cold and wet Melbourne morning, but we're not worried about the weather because we're going to be indoors all day playing online poker. The goal for today, as always, is to get that 1,500 hands of A-grade level play. Feeling pretty good, but definitely do need a feed before I do attack this day. So without any further ado, let's go eat. Yo, it's about 7 a.m. at the moment, feeling full. Actually, I think that feed was probably a bit too much. If anything, I'm a bit over full, but you know what? That's fine. We need the energy to go attack these 1,500 hands to make sure I do play my A-grade level play today. Number one, I'm going to stick to 5 tables, not going to mix in the 6th. It is still pretty early, so definitely going to have time to get full volume at 5 tables. Additionally, practice that self-talk, make sure all of my decisions are a logical response to my opponent's strategies, and if we do that for the 1,500 hands, I'll definitely give myself an A for it. Don't have much more time to waste, so let's go play the poker now. Welcome back everyone. It is currently 4 p.m. here in Melbourne and I've just wrapped up my second poker session for the day. Was able to play a total of 5 hours and 43 minutes today, winding me up with a total of 1,563 hands. So yet again, we do beat the 1,500 hand goal for today, which obviously I'm pretty stoked about. In terms of results on the day, a bit less stoked. Ended up losing 379 across the day, unfortunately. In terms of my gameplay grade, I'm going to give myself a B. I do feel for the most part during today's session, I was focused, keyed in, looking for the mistakes my opponents were doing. However, I think the thing I have to downgrade myself for most is I really do feel like I've lost that competitive edge that I talked about at the start of the week, where I was in that 2-5 mindset of really trying to push these mistakes that my opponent's making and exploit them to the maximum. Today I felt a bit more lethargic and like I was just going with the flow, wasn't really aggressively trying to outplay my opponents, and I think that reflected in the results. Having said that though, I don't think I made any huge, egregious mistakes that I really did because I was on tilt or something. I just felt like I was on cruise control a bit today and wasn't as aggressively playing the best poker that I possibly could. So, gonna give myself a B as a result. So the action gets to a tight aggressive cutoff, who goes ahead and opens it up to 5. And then a loose aggressive small blind decides to call the 5. And the action's on me in the big blind, and I have ace queen offsuit. Already, I think I have a few interesting options at my disposal at this point. I think calling would actually be fine. You do want some strong hands in your big blind defense range pre-flop. Obviously, ace queen's a pretty strong hand, and getting such a good price to see a flop, I think calling's totally fine. I also like 3-betting though, and the reason for that is because ace queen is such a strong hand, you can go ahead and raise it up for value, particularly against a cutoff open, because obviously a cutoff open is going to be a bit wider and there's more hands in that range that you can get value from with ace queen. So I think both of those options are fine. I slightly prefer 3-betting just because it's against a cutoff open range. If I was against under the gun or middle position opening range, I'll probably be more inclined to call. But I like 3-betting in this spot. and I go ahead and do that. I make it 20, and then the initial raiser actually folds, but the small blind decides to call again. So we go heads up with the small blind to a flop of King 8-6 rainbow. Then the small blind checks it over to me. And I think I have a pretty interesting decision here, whether I want to c-bet or check. The reasons I will potentially like checking here are, I do think it's very likely that we do have the best hand with ace high. If my opponent called twice with like ace 10, ace jack, obviously, jack 10 suited, we beat all of those hands. But there are a bunch of hands in our opponent's range that we do lose to, like pocket 10s, pocket 9s, or even a strong king, king queen, king jack. And so when we bet, we're probably going to get called by all those hands in my opponent's range that are stronger than us. But if we bet and they fold, we're just going to fold out all those hands that are weaker than our hand. This is what is commonly called a game theory disaster, where we fold out worse and only get called by better. So that will be one huge reason I'll consider just checking here. The reason I do like betting here though is on this board in particular, when we have 3-bet pre-flop, we're going to have all the really strong hands. Obviously, we're going to have a bunch of ace-king combinations here, pocket aces, king queens suited. So we can actually represent a lot of strength on this board by betting. This might even be a good spot to use a range bet and just bet all of the hands in our range, just because I do think it is pretty likely we're going to get a lot of folds on this board from our opponent. And obviously, if we're going to bet all the hands in our range, ace queen is a really good hand to use. It's actually also a really good hand to use as a bluff on multiple streets, because we do block the strongest hands my opponent can have. Obviously, it's less likely that they can call down with ace king or king queen when we do have the blockers to that. So I can really see going either way here. I decide to use the range bet strategy on the king high board, but I could definitely be talked into that a check is a better move. I decide to go ahead and bet though. I make it 15, and then the small blind calls. So we're heads up to the turn, which is the queen of hearts. So obviously a pretty good turn card for us. We do make a strong pair, but here's where things get really interesting. The small blind actually decides to lead out for 30.5. The action's on me here, and honestly, I was pretty confused in this spot. I wasn't sure why my opponent would lead this card in particular. They definitely do have king queen in their range. It's a hand they can very credibly represent with a bet here, but I'm not sure why they would bet that hand. Wouldn't they want to let me bet off my ace kings and then mix in a check raise or a trap? So I was pretty confused by what this lead meant. I actually thought it was possible that they were doing it with some ace x of hearts combination. So if they have ace jack of hearts and they did make the float to my smaller bet on the flop, obviously they've turned a royal flush draw, and they could potentially be semi-bluffing with a hand like that. Also somewhat possible that maybe they didn't 3-bet or 4-bet queens pre-flop. I'm a little more skeptical of that, but that's definitely a hand they could be doing this with as well. Obviously though, we have a queen in our hands, we know that's less likely. Also less likely that they do have king queen, so I actually think this is a really good spot to call in position here. And that's what I do. I throw in the call, and then we are heads up to the river. The river is the 9 of spades. Then my opponent keeps betting. They go ahead and make it 60, so a bit less than half pot. The action's on me now, and I'll be honest, this is a really sick spot with ace queen here. And I actually potentially consider doing all 3 options. I think all 3 of them have a lot of merit here. The reason I would potentially consider calling here are if my opponent is bluffing with an ace jack of hearts, ace 10 of hearts. Obviously we beat those, but I think it's somewhat possible my opponent could have an ace 5 of hearts, an ace 2 of hearts, hand like that in their range, maybe even 10-9 of hearts as well. So if they do have all of those bluffs in their range, we should probably call here, getting such a good price. Having said that though, the reasons I would potentially consider just folding here are, I'm not quite sure if my opponent would, call twice with ace 4 of hearts, ace 5 of hearts, or if they would even bluff with a hand that had showdown value like 10-9 of hearts, for example. Obviously we lose to jack 10 on the river, as well as 9-8 and the king queen that I mentioned earlier. So obviously there are a bunch of hands we lose to, and if I do take a lot of those bluffs out of my opponent's range, that will be the reason I will potentially consider folding here. The reasons I'd potentially consider bluff raising here are, I do think it's somewhat possible my opponent is sort of like leading out for a smaller bet to try and, buy a cheap showdown. If they are value betting a hand like king jack or king 10, they're probably planning to fold that to a raise. So if we do go ahead and raise here, we're going to win the pot and bluff them off their hand. So all 3 options on the table, all of them make a lot of sense in my opinion. Really not sure what the best option is, even looking back at the hand. In the moment though, I do decide to call here. I do give my opponent a lot of credit for those ace-x of heart combos, and I wasn't quite sure that they would be betting for thin value with like a king jack or a king 10. I really thought they'd check that to induce a bet or a bluff from me on the turn in particular. Also, I do really like blocking king queen in this spot. That's another good reason I like calling with this hand. Not quite sure how I feel about it even to this point. It is a very confusing spot. I call in the moment though, and then my opponent shows ace queen of diamonds. So there you go. I wasn't quite expecting to see that hand here. Having said that though, I think they actually were doing like the thin value bet thing, trying to buy a cheap showdown, because obviously they do have a lot of showdown value with their ace queen, and we do call and end up chopping with them here. So I really think that was a super interesting spot, and even to this point, even knowing my opponent does have a hand like ace queen in their range there, I'm still not sure how to play this river. I guess I like bluff raising, blocking king queen, and they are going for thin value with a hand like that. It's such a close spot though. Please hop down below in the comments and leave your thoughts on what you would do on that river decision. I can see potentially doing any three of the options. Let me know what your favorite on the river is. Do you like just going ahead and folding? Do you like mixing in the call, or do you like going for the bluff raise? Hop down in the comments below and let me know what your thoughts are. Very curious to hear your opinion on this hand in particular. That's going to wrap up another vlog for today. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. As always, I really do appreciate that. It helps the channel out a bunch. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Appreciate all of you who have subscribed. So thank you yet again. I'm out of here. Peace.